Hey everyone, my name is Malaysia and I'm one of the SWE members. I want to welcome you back to our coding video, and today I'm very excited to introduce you to our first coding challenge. This is a great way to see how far you've come and how much you learned since we first started. So variables, operators, if-else statements, and loops. So we'll be taking a break from our Python ice cream shop to make a game. I'll apply a lot of what we learned with number guessing. So let's begin. Game description. So the game is pretty simple, but there is a lot of room for customization and expansion. So here are the basics. The game generates a random number for the player to guess. The player gets a certain number of guesses to guess this random number, and each time the guess is made, we check it with the random number and compare. Are they equal? And if they're equal, the game ends and the player wins, or the game can end if they run out of guesses. And for each incorrect guess, we also would want to let the user know if their guess is too high or too low. So now let's see it in action. And here we set a lot of print line statements to kind of allow the users to understand how the game works. So we welcome them, we tell them how to play, and it's easier to understand how to work with it. So here we just enter a number and it tells you too low, and it helps you kind of get closer to the right answer. If you get it wrong, they tell you, oh, sorry, your answer was wrong. So yeah, here you can just see a few examples. And lastly, this is just one flaw. I do want to point out that you could always add as somehow you want to customize or expand on it. Here we did 2, 4, and 2, and the answer was 10. And here you can see that we're still allowed to do repeats, and also another thing that isn't shown in the video, you're also still allowed to do numbers that are outside of the range. However, you actually do have the skills to restrict that from the user. So if you finish this and you're like, oh, that was easy, or you finished it and you're like, wow, that was really fun, I want to expand on it, here are a few tips, but there's also plenty of other things you could do. So now here we go into the logic, think of how you can start thinking of it as a computer, and also just how you may want to think about it. So the code generates a random number for the user to guess. Every time the user guesses an answer, we'll compare the guess with the correct answer. If the guess is correct, we'll congratulate the user, and if the guess is wrong, we'll give a hint to the user that the guess is too high or too low. Now, before we can go, you've learned a lot and most of what you need to know for this challenge, but here's a few bits of code that will be helpful. First, we have random, and we have to import it. In the beginning of the code, you'll want to use that statement of import random, and that allows you to bring in things. So just really with the import keyword, you can allow developers to adopt methods and behaviors that have already been made. So it saves you from redundant coding. And for this helps us make a random integer. So with setting your range, you do random.randint, and it's 1 to 10. And so yeah, it will return a random integer from 1 to 10, but you could also make it whatever range you want. Another piece of helpful code is how to make it interactive and make the prompts like that in the game. So with that, there are ways to do it, but also you can combine it. So we could also do it separate things of ask the user, and you could say, oh, guess a number from 1 to 10, and then the input function, which is the key part of it, guess equals input, and then you can just allow the user to write an input, but it would just be more efficient, and this is what we used in our code. You did guess equals int, input, guess a number from 1 to 10, and that make sure it's an integer, and also writes a statement so that you can insert your guess right next to that print line. Last bit of code, which isn't fully necessary, but if you feel that you might want it, I can explain it. So if you want to stop a loop or leave a loop early, is the break value. And here is a chart to kind of understand it more, but I think it also helps just to look at an example in which it can add another condition or another standard that leaves the loop immediately, not after a second check or whatever. So in here, we go through each letter of Python, and so we went through P, we printed out P. We went to Y, we printed out Y. We went to T, we print out T. But then at H, we hit the break, and that break leaves immediately. It doesn't print H. So it goes to the next part and just prints the end. And you can also look at this graph to understand it more. Okay, now I want to give you some helpful tips if you feel a little stuck or don't really fully know how to approach it. And I think this will be really helpful and you'll be ready to code the game. Okay, so one is maybe thinking about how to establish a loop, because most of the game most likely would be in a loop of the game being in progress. And one way to think about it is, in what kind of conditions is the game going, or when does it end? One is when all the guesses are used up, and another is when the guess is made and it's correct. So now that could get you thinking, well, we end the loop when either of these conditions are met. And so that means maybe like, does that hint to any type of loop we should use? And I can let you think about that. Two is you might want to use some if-else statements for these conditions. And so maybe one of the conditions is once the game is right, you might want to make a variable to store that status. Again, this isn't necessary and you can have so many other ways of doing this, but this is a suggestion. And so one is that, like, if the game is won, you create a variable, game won, and it's true. And if it's not, it stays false or whatever. And you can also print or let them know, oh, your guess is incorrect. And after each time, you may want to deduct a guess. And then lastly is the end of the loop. And so once you leave the loop, you have to kind of let the user know, did you win or did you lose? So if the game was won, you're like, yay, you win, you guess the number, you win a prize. And if you don't, you say, sorry, try again next time. You could also tell them what the number is so that they always know, oh, that's it. And maybe, you could think of any other conditions that you would want to end the loop. And so that's it. You've done it. You have everything you need to go forward, and really wish you the best of luck. And also, if you do want to join a raffle for Amazon gift cards, please send us your submission by July 17th. But also, even if it is after July 17th, we still please encourage you to send it. We're happy to receive as many and wish you happy coding. Good luck, and comment if you have any questions. Bye.